Hello everyone. Let's begin by understanding the rules of the Incoterms. When you export or import, the buyer and the seller should understand the Incoterms in order to determine the obligations and the responsibilities between the buyer and the seller in transporting the good, and in order to avoid all the problems which may occur afterward. There are 11 Incoterms in Incoterms 2020. Each Incoterm will have different scope of responsibility, which is difficult to learn by heart, especially for those who just start working in the logistics field. Therefore, today we are going to explain the most frequently used 6 Incoterms in export and import. If you understand these 6 Incoterms, it will be easier for you to understand how to use the remaining 5 Incoterms. First of all, it's X works. The buyer is responsible for all costs arising and take all the risk in order to deliver the goods from the seller's factory to the buyer's warehouse. In other words, X works is the easiest trade condition for seller. Next, it's FOB, free on board. The seller delivers the goods, cleared for export, loaded on board the vessel at the named port of loading. Once the goods have been loaded on board the vessel at port of loading, the risk transfers to the buyer. The buyer pays for the freight charge from the port of loading to the port of destination, and the buyer will do the import customs clearance and pays for the import duty, and delivers the goods from the port of destination to the buyer's warehouse by himself. FOB is very similar to FCA, free carrier, with the difference that FCA is an Incoterm which works for all modes of transport, but FOB only applies to sea shipments, and under FOB, the seller is responsible for loading goods on board of the vessel, whereas for FCA it's the buyer's responsibility. Next, it's CFR, costs and freight. The seller arranges and pays for transport the goods from the port of loading to the named port of destination. The buyer is responsible for import customs clearance and import duty, and the buyer delivers the goods from the port of destination to the buyer's warehouse by himself. CIF, cost, insurance and freight. The burden and the responsibilities of CIF will be similar to CFR, except CIF requires the seller to take out the insurance for delivering the goods from the port of loading to the port of destination. The CIF is similar to carriage and insurance paid to CIP, except that CIP is used for all modes of transport, but CIF only applies to sea shipments. And under CIF the seller is responsible for delivers the goods at origin port, whereas for CIP, the seller is responsible for delivers the goods at an agreed upon location to the carrier in the origin country. DAP, delivered at place. The seller is responsible for arranging the carriage and for delivering the goods, ready for unloading from the arriving means of transport at the buyer's warehouse. The buyer is responsible for import customs clearance and any applicable local taxes or import duty under DAP. DDP, or delivered duty paid. The seller is responsible for all risk and costs associated with shipping and delivering goods to buyer's warehouse, including the import customs clearance and import duty. The aforementioned 6 Incoterms are considered to be the most frequently used Incoterms in international trade. However, the buyer and the seller are required to understand and know how to use the Incoterms, which will be beneficial to themselves in order to deliver the goods smoothly in international transport.